Welcome to the Home Building Hub, your essential podcast guide to building your new home. Hosted by industry experts Colin Bischoff and Darren Brennan, this conversational podcast will help better educate you about all things new home building so you can avoid costly mistakes and enjoy your building experience to the fullest, no matter which home builder you choose.
Hey there, folks. Welcome to the Home Building Hub. You're with Colin and co-host Darren Brennan as always. And Dazza, today, how long does your base price really last for, or how long is it protected for? That's what we're going to cover. And basically what happened, Darren, is we had a question sent in via email, and we have covered this a little bit throughout different episodes over time. We wanted to do a specific episode for those of you who are just seeking the answer to this question. They had sent information around sort of their situation up in Queensland, like it's due to title or register in 12 months. And they were sort of trying to get their head around how long's my base price locked in for? What the hell does contingency mean? And how does all that work? And so we thought we'd just break that up really quickly and in a nice, simple format for everyone to, watch. I assume we'll jet through this in about 10 minutes or so.
Absolutely.
How you doing, mate? Good?
Going real well, mate. Yeah, real well. So looking forward to another episode. And yeah, hopefully, again, it's nice to have these questions come through. So if you do at any stage, you've got a question about building and we can help you, shoot us an email. You can check it out via our website at homebuildinghub.com.au.
Yep.
We're always open to those, and they're often, these are what stem the next episode. So, the ideas that come to us, the questions that come to us, we're here to try and help. And so if it's a question for one person, it's often a question for many. So, it's a good reason to create an episode on that. So
Yeah.
we
All
appreciate
right.
it.
Let's kick off and let's establish what something means. So firstly, Daz, do you want to cover what actually is? So what is a base price?
Yeah, for sure. So the base price represents that particular home design. And the way I've always explained it to people, Colin, is you get a set of standard plans and a set of standard inclusions, or the base inclusions. Put those two together and you pretty much got your base house price, right? So in the simplest form. So standard plans, standard inclusions equals your base price. It is a little bit more complex than that, but in essence, that's how it comes about. The way the builder works it out is they look at what are the costs for the materials to build that standard home, and all the materials that are required. They look at the cost of the labour and how much labour is going to be required. Again, that's, it's quite a big task to put together that price when you think of it like that, right? And that's for every home design in their range. So they work through, and that's what they call a bill of quantities, or basically a set of orders, whether that be for labour or for materials, that stack up, and that they then put a margin on that they need to run their business. And then as you put in the notes, voila, it magically here's this base price for you. But it is a complex thing. Like, it's not like they go, I will just work that out in an hour this afternoon. You've got to work out how many bricks, how many roof tiles, how many lineal meters of plasterboard, and how long it's going to take that plasterer to do that work. Is it more complex or less complex? You've got all your electrical items or your plumbing items. It goes on and on, right? So as you can imagine, throughout the home. And again, depending on what your inclusions are, some will include tiles and flooring throughout the whole home. Others won't. So they're going to work that bit out. All those things go into making that base price. So
Yes, base price
pretty
will not
simple
be,
and very complex as well.
yeah.
So
No, it should be simple for the buyer. That house, that price. Understanding
correct.
the base price is not your end price. Usually on top of the base price comes the estate requirements, the site costs, and your upgrades and so on top of that. So now we know what a base price is. Let's talk about what is a price lock period. There are other terms for it, but basically, how long is the base price protected for? So basically, if you purchase a house right now today, in theory, most builders will lock your base price in for usually 12 months, and some even go up to 18 months, which is a fairly decent amount of time. So what this means is the builder's committing to you that they will provide that price for you, for those standard inclusions for that period of time, starting from the deposit stage or sometimes the contract signing stage up until your site start or site commencement stage. Okay, so you've got that price secured, let's say hypothetically, for 12 months from the date of deposit. And as long as you started your construction within the 12-month period, you will not expect any additional costs. Okay, so that's what the price lock period means. I think when you have titled land, Darren, price lock periods are probably less relevant. Like if you've got titled, registered land that's ready to build on, you're usually on site within 3 or 4 months, assuming
Yeah.
finance and everything else is in order for a greenfield site. However, if your land is not titled, that's where it can become a little more interesting. So if it's not ready to build on, you bought a block from a developer and they're saying, hey, it's going to title in X number of months, that's when your contingency and your base price period comes into play. So we'll let you, Darren, cover contingency. But what I want to explain to people is let's work out how you get there in the first place. So let's say the example that our listener had popped through, they were going to commit to the builder in June 2025. And basically their land is not expected to be built to be titled ready to build on for 12 months. So you're talking about June 2026. Now, in the event our listener, her name's Faith was getting a 12-month price protection period, that's great, right? So if she deposited today in June and she's got 12 months till June, the reality is her site start won't happen in June next year. Because if that really does title on time, you got to settle, and then your builder's still got stuff to do to get to site. Could take another 2 to 4 weeks after that. So realistically, her site start month in reality is probably July at best, maybe even August 2026. So in that case, she's got 12 months protected, but now we're up to month 13 and month 14, proposing a site start in month 14. So
Yeah.
what happens then is the builder applies a contingency. So that's the next step we want to cover to make sure you understand the next, like what needs to be in your quote and so on. So Daz, let's jump on to contingency.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess, again, we're talking about this period. And again, talk to your builder because some could be as low as 4 months, right? Because they're expecting that your land's titled. And if it's not titled, then you could be up for contingency from 4 months on. So just ask that question. How long's my base price locked in for?
Yeah.
And again, some are up to sort of 18 months, as you mentioned. And I think I've seen some builders even pushing out now to 24 months, Colin, which is amazing. Well done. But your base price, let's say it's locked in for 12 months, you're going to start in, say, month 13 or 14 and so on. Then there is an additional cost usually to build, provided, and again, talk to your builder because every builder's process and I guess details on this will vary, but generally speaking, there'll be a cost to add on, and that's assuming the base price hasn't gone up over that period of time. And again, we do regularly see builders' base prices going up, so it'd be unlikely that the base price hasn't gone up. But if it hadn't, you may find don't have to pay it. But assuming it has, then there's this additional cost, and it's generally a cost per month that would be added. Look, around about $1,000 a month. But again, some builders will have a flat fee, for example, $1,000 a month. Others will have a charge of a percentage, 0.5% of the base price per month, 0.75 of the base price per month, up until you start the home. And that's the important bit. So if, for example, when you're saying, Colin, with Faith, that the land's going to title in 12 months, you do need a month or two to get through building permits, settle the land, all this other information, getting all the information back from the authorities, connection points and stuff so you can get to site. So you really want to allow a couple extra months up your sleeve so you're at least across that. I guess it's important to make sure that if you know that it's going to be delayed, it's better to put that price into your contract so you can borrow against that than to be having to often fund that yourself or go back to the bank and get your loan redone because you're only finding out about that, after the fact. So talk to your builder about that up front. Look, can we allow a little bit, a couple of months maybe, in there as a contingency? And if we don't use that, what's the process of me getting back those funds, right? So just be clear on what that looks like. But you want to have that contingency up your sleeve so that, you don't have any rude surprises, I guess. And again, how long is that for? The other part is builders often won't. They'll have an end period of that as well. It might be to 18 months. So from between 12 and 18 months, so allowing for 6 months. It might be right out to 2 years. They often won't do it forever. And part of that is because builders got caught in the early parts of COVID where there were long delays and they'd said, great, we'll allow $1,000 per month, but prices were going up significantly more than $1,000 per month. And the builder wasn't able to make up that gap. And so builders don't want to expose themselves too much, and they shouldn't have to, right? Because that's not their risk to be taking. If you're buying a block of land, you're taking the risk on that block of land. And
Mm.
we've seen blocks take, and hopefully we never see it that bad again, but 3 and 4 years, Colin, in some
Yeah,
cases,
we
which
have.
is crazy. And that's not great that the developer strung someone along for that period of time, but it has happened. So, again, understand, and we spoke about it in a previous episode just a couple of weeks ago, understand about what's that look like when you're doing research on your developer. Are they usually on time? And a lot of the big guys are, or pretty close, maybe within a month or two. We're now seeing right now titles coming in early because they're super efficient right now. Well done. But also, if they've got a history of being late, what does that look like? Are they going to be late by a month or two? Or are they going to be late by a year? Because that's a big difference in cost. At $1,000 a month, there's 12 grand if they're a year later than anticipated,
Yeah.
potentially.
And I'd say on
Um,
top of that, Darren, if they protect the period for 12 months and they allow in a contingency agreed figure, percentage or flat fee per month up to 18 months, if your land registers or titles and the site start hasn't happened till after that,
yep,
you're very likely to have to, in essentially, you're agreeing to the current day pricing.
correct.
That's most common by
Spot on.
builders. So I think to wrap it up, we'll go through a practical example, which was pretty close in line with what Faith's example was. So your land is it's June 2025 right now at the time of recording this. Your land is expected to title in 12 months, so June 2026. Your builder has a 12-month price protection period in their base price. So you've got, and let's assume you're depositing today. Um, that means that you're protected till June 2026 from a base price point of view. As we've explained, it takes 1 or 2 months to get to site. So, assuming the titles happen in June, that's most important, that point. Assuming they actually happen in June and you get to a site start in August, in the case of that practical example, we would be saying 12 months is covered in the base price. And in the quote, I'd be putting in a thing saying your contingency, agreed contingency period and amount is covering the extra 2 months is $1,000 per month times 2 months is $2,000. So your overall quote will increase by $2,000 to get you to a site start in August 2026. That's a practical example. Now, the last thing we'd add, as we covered, but in terms of the practical sense, if Faith's land doesn't title for a 3 months after that, let's say it doesn't title till even October, and the site start occurs in November or December, that contingency period now becomes, $1,000 per month up to the 18-month period that the builder's willing to offer that contingency. And remember, the builder is giving you a base price, and they're essentially saying, "I will honour this price today in 12 months from now." And then I'll for only $1,000 a month for up to 18 months, I will actually honour that price as well. So whatever service you provide or work you're in, if you had to commit to your customer a price today that you'll still have to honour in 18 months, it's pretty ambitious to expect that, right? But that's what builders are doing. So you
Yep.
just have to understand in Faith's case, let's assume she's still within the 18-month period, but it's gone more than 2 months. The builder will say, sorry, Faith, we need to charge you an extra 3K on top of the two that's in your quote. Now, that 3K is likely to come out of her pocket. So our advice is always buffer up your contingency a little bit more because you just, as a safety barrier, in case the land doesn't title on the month that they tell you it's going to, because the land titles are always, at best, they don't tell you, look, it's going to be 3 years. they're going to say, look, it's probably going to be 2 years, things like that. And that's not their fault. That's the indications are the land's expected to title June 2026. The reality is red tape and whatever reasons, it doesn't actually happen to October. The builder does not and should not have to pay for that. The
Yep.
client has to pay for that. Okay, even though it's really not your client's fault either. So that's how that works. And the last part of the practical example I'll share is that you have, in Faith's case, let's say it doesn't title for another 6, 7, or 8 months after June, and we're trickling into 2027, then unfortunately the builder's going to have to say, look, we will need to revisit that price at the time. And that means whatever the base price is in January 2027 or so, that's the new price that Faith will have to pay to proceed with construction on her lot due to the delay in land title or registration. And that might be a $5,000 difference, Darren. It might be a $25,000 difference. The builder doesn't
Yep.
know that, nor do you. But that's how a builder plays it. So I think the builders do a fantastic job at protecting pricing for 12 to 18 months and providing contingency paths, so you really know what you're expected to pay in the event of delays. But after it ticks over that 18-month period for most builders, maybe 24 months, you cannot expect any human being or any builder out there to provide you with a price today and guarantee it in 2 years. That's what broke the industry a few years ago, Daz, isn't it? So
Yeah, correct. And you don't want that happening. You certainly, the last thing you want to see is your builder going broke because they did that with multiple customers. That's the worst case scenario.
yeah. And a lot of blame went on the builder for doing that, and fair enough. But it's a lot of pressure from clients to builders too to give me the cheapest price, and they're comparing against 5 other builders, and they put them all on the table, and they're like, "No, you got to give me more,
Yep.
discount," and you're like, "God, it's pretty hard out there." So it is a two-way street, that discussion, that argument. But anyway, we didn't quite meet the 10 minutes, Daz, but I'm sure we provide some great value to everyone. This is a
Absolutely.
very interesting topic that I think, in fairness to customers, a lot of consultants do not explain it clearly and properly. And it
Yep.
needs to be a very important discussion for every consultant that's out there listening. God, just spend the time. Take 10 minutes, go through this properly so your customer understands it. And if you can't be bothered, send them to the podcast, this episode right now, and at least they'll understand it then. That would be very helpful.
Cool.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. We appreciate you listening as always, and give us some feedback. 5-star review would be great if you can on the platform you're on, and any questions, topic ideas, as I said, feedback, just jump homebuildinghub.com.au and jump on there, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Catch you next time. Thanks for listening to the podcast, guys. And just our disclaimer, whilst we're all about providing value to you, this podcast should not be considered as legal or financial advice. It contains general information only, and you should seek out independent professional advice on your personal situation before making any legal or financial decisions.
1, 2,